Hello, I'm Bruce Freet, and I'm from Mount Vernon, Washington, and I'm here at the Confluence Fly Shop. And we're about ready to tie what I call a black and pearl. It's on a 16 Tiemco 200 hook, and I've got a 3/32 bead, black bead on it. This fishes really well first part of the season as a Chironomid just above, maybe about 3 feet above a bloodworm. And so the bloodworm is just off the bottom a couple of feet as well. So we're going to start off this morning with some organza thread, and I pull off about 4 strands and then fold it over and cut it, so I end up with about 8 strands in there. So here's the organza. It's got enough sparkle to attract fish as a gill, and here I'm going to cut them in half and just trim them off. Put them together and hold them, and of course I've got our black thread. We're going to tie this on first, and so we're just going to loop this over, anchor it in, and there we are. Whoop. We'll try that again. Anchor that down, and we're good there. Going to trim off the excess thread. Lay our gills right on top, and a light loop to begin with to capture that and make sure that they're on top if they slide over. A few more wraps will anchor that down. We can take our time because we want to make sure those gills are where we want them. Taper that a little bit. And then I fold them back and come up next to the eye so that they stick up a little bit. Now I'm going to trim that excess off, and you can save this for another fly because it's long enough if you wish. Just put them off to the side of your vise. And now I'm going to do just a couple of half hitches next to that eye to wrap this part of it off, tie it off. So we're just going to do a couple of quick half hitches. Doesn't have to be anything fancy because we're going to put a little bit of hard as nails or head cement on there as well. So we just make sure that's nice and secure. You don't want a lot of thread in there. You want to make sure that that bead is going to slide over it very nicely. By putting these thread wraps between the gill and the eye of the hook, what that does is make sure that they stand up really nicely, and it's easy for you to put your tippet through the eye. This fly fishes best if it's in a loop, a mono loop on your tippet, and a little fluorocarbon will just make sure that you've got that stealth appearance on the fly. And now I can bring this bead forward, and there we are. You can see, and I can trim that off, and I will later on trim that gill off to the desired length, which is about half the size of the bead as a general rule. Now I'm going to tie back on here with the black thread, and I'm tying extra here, and I'll continue to tie extra next to the bead so I end up with a nice tapered body. I'm going to get this extra thread out of my way, and now we're going to come down. Well, I guess first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in some pearl Krystal Flash. This will be our ribbing, and we'll just tie that in right now. Tie it in next to the bead because this is going to be the fattest part of the body. We want to keep the rest of the body as thin as possible. I need to capture that there. There I go. So now I'm going to come back down. This is all going to be covered up, so nothing to worry about at this point. I'm going to come back to the beginning of the bend, about where if the thread comes down, it's past the point. A nice place to think about is that the thread's going to drop down vertically right about where the barb was on the hook. So that's a general guideline for that. And now I'm going to come forward with this thread, and I'm going to begin to form the base of the body. So I'm coming right back to the bead. Then I'm going to wrap down about 2/3 of the way because I want to taper this body. So about 2/3 and back again. And about halfway along the shank of the hook and back again. And then about 1/3 of the way. And these are just a general guideline on that body base. I'm looking at it again and I'm thinking, this isn't quite what I want, so I'm going to go down a little further and then back again to make it a little fatter. Now there's many types of material that you can use to make a black body, but this works really well, and it's just a little layer over, and this is black Flashabou. And so I've got one strand here. You can easily use 2 strands if you wish a thicker body or you're not putting down as much thread. But I've got just 2, and I'm folding them over. I've got 1 strand, I'm folding it over, which will give me 2 strands. I'm going to tie them in at the base, right behind the bead. Again, that's where I don't care whether it's bulky, because I need to taper into the body into the bead anyway. There we go, I captured it in the thread. Now I'm going to bring the thread back all the way. No, I'm not. I'm going to back off, got ahead of myself. So what I'm going to do at this point, instead, I've anchored in, and I'm going to go down and back with this black Flashabou. Now when you get down to where that hook is, you've got to come in at a slant, a little bit of an oval, so that the tip of the hook, the point of the hook, doesn't ding the Flashabou, because this stuff is fragile, and all it takes is a little bit of that point on the hook, and this stuff breaks. So now I've gone down to the end of the body, and I'm coming forward now. So I'm doing it a double amount. Of course, I've got 2 strands, and I'm using my fingers to keep it straight, flat, so I don't have twists in it, because twists will give you a bump in the body, and it won't look natural. So now I'm just about there. I think I could make it a little fatter, but I'm going to put 1 thread or 2 thread wraps over there just to hold it enough so it doesn't unravel on me, and I'm going to go back again to give myself a little more of a taper on this body. Keeping the body thin, keeping the Flashabou flat so we don't have any twists in it, bringing it forward to just behind the bead, and then I'm going to lock that in place with 2 wraps behind the material, 1, 2, and 1 forward. So I have a nice X pattern with my thread, which will hold it in place and it won't get away from me. Alright, I'm coming in and snipping this with just the tips of my scissors, and now I'm ready to go with the Pearl Krystal Flash. And so for strength, we're going to go a counter wrap with this. So we're going to go this direction, and we're holding it so that it is flat. We're taking all the twists out, and we're probably going to put about 5 wraps for ribbing on here. There's 2. 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to come in next to the bead for 6. I'm just going to put another one in there. This is going to be covered up, but I want to make sure I have plenty of material for the thread to capture that. So the same thing, you've got 2 wraps of thread on the back side, 1 wrap on the forward side, and that locks that in. I'm going to come in with my scissors, snip that off. I'm going to put some other wraps on here, so I've got some taper to the bead that's black. Alright, I've got that done. We're going to come in here. I'm going to tie it off with just a quick half hitch right behind the bead. There we are, coming in. That takes care of that. Now we're going to come in with our whip finisher, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're done there. So that's nice and secure. Come in with the tip of our scissors again. Moment of truth. There we go. We've got our basic fly. It's a great opportunity now to take those gills and fold them back. Enough so I can see I want about half the bead. There we are, and you can see how by tying the gills ahead of where we originally, right behind the eye, it makes them stand up nicely so you can get your fluorocarbon tippet down through the eye and it stands out a little bit more. Now we can either cover this with hard as nails and give it 2 coats. I like to use the Loon UV clear finish because these materials are fragile. So this will give a really nice coating on it, secure it, and it'll also look a little bit like the exoskeleton of, or the shuck part of the Chironomid. So dual reason to have this UV cement on there. So we've got a little bit on there. We're going to use the light on this and rotate it so that we get a nice even seal and an even body on there. Now this pearl Krystal Flash, depending on the light, will either look clear or it'll kind of have a greenish tint to it. And that's one of the reasons I like it, is because depending on the light, it will reflect different colors. So there we are. I mean, that's the fly. And again, tie it a little bit above, like 3 feet above your bloodworm. You got 2 flies on. Or if you're fishing this by itself under a strike indicator, about 5 feet off the bottom will do it. Somewhere between 3 to 5 feet. Anyway, a nice spring, early spring fly to use. Well, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it. And come to the Confluence Fly Shop for materials.